Africa, it has been through a lot. Africans, we have been through so many things. Africa never found the true freedom that our forefathers had fought for. And it is now more than ever we need to take what belongs to us. In order for us to do so, we need to sit down and talk. Yes, I want to talk about one of us, a Pan-African, who have African DNA running in his blood. Of course, I'm talking about Julius Malema, who's the president of EFF. We are going to watch some of his interesting speech which he has given in behalf of Africans. We're going to listen to it, give it an analysis and our commentary. Julius Malema called for France to leave Africa once for all. He did not beat around the bush. Instead, he was very straight in his language. He asked for France to leave Africa with its affairs. Julius Malema is one of those Pan-Africans who've been fighting for one Africa currency. And one of his reasons was to see some of African countries who are still using franc CFA money, which is a French currency, since the time of colonization. So Julius Malema had to remind Africans that we don't want to rely on France. Instead, France is the one who needs Africa. Africa, we don't need France. So therefore, there's no need for us to keep having so many currencies which belongs to France when we can have our own currency. So this pains Julius Malema when he get to see about more than 33 countries in Africa who are still using this currency. That is when he decided to say this.
In this day and era, you still have a situation where there are African states paying colonial tax to France. France, it is what it is because of those African states. You have the reserve banks of African states in France and not in Africa itself. And we must accept that and say it is acceptable, it is in the interest of Africa. It is not. We want Africans to have control over their own currency. We want Africans to have control over their own economy and what constitutes their own economy. Our struggle seeks to inspire that. We cannot protect white privilege at the expense of the majority African people in South Africa and the whole entire African continent. We are hated for saying that. We are hated for demanding that we must all be treated as equals. It's not going to change that. We will rather die for a dream that is going to be realized by many generations after us. Even if we don't realize it ourselves, we've made a commitment to lay a firm foundation for generations to come. We seek to inspire confidence amongst many African masses that they must stand on their own.
France needs Africa. Africa does not need France. Wow, this is a very interesting speech from Julius Malema. France needs Africa. Africa does not need France. But why so? Well, for those who don't know the history, Africa we've been attacked. They took so many brothers and sisters back in days. And they were taken to the United States of America. A lot of them, they were killed and few were used for slavery. After enjoying the service of Africans, they decided to come back now to slave the whole Africa continent. That is how Africa continent was shaped. Before, we used to be one continent. Before, we used to be one country. So they came to divide Africa. That is how today we are having South Africa, we are having Togo, we are having Senegal, we are having Burkina Faso, we are having DR Congo, we are having Zambia, we are having Zimbabwe, we are having Nigeria, we are having all these countries that we know in Africa, because they felt like, okay, we have find ourselves some good people whom we can use as our slaves. So each and everyone, they have to take their share. So we become like that piece of cake that everyone want to share. And the country that end up having a lot of countries, that was France, which had about 32 countries, if I'm not mistaken, that they had on their possession as the countries that they were running. In other words, they had colonized. Now, after sharing Africa into pieces, where you get to see France with its own countries, Belgium with their countries, Portugal with their countries, British, and then Africans could not sit and just looking how they've been killed and being treated by other people. Instead, that is when each and every African from those different parts of the African countries that they had shared to themselves, some leaders start raising up their voice to alert or open the eyes of their fellow Africans so that we can claim our freedoms. And that is how we had people such as Patrick Emery Lumumba, Thomas Sankara, Nelson Mandela. There are so many, Robert Mugabe, there are so many. I can't be able to mention their names here. And whenever this was happening, these people now, they were living. When I'm saying these people, you know to whom I'm referring to. Of course, it is the open eye mass system. So they were now living and going to their countries. But here comes one thing. They were living physically and not financially. Do you know why? Because there was something that they need from Africa. Julius Malema just said, France needs Africa. Africa does not need France. And these words were confirmed by the former president of France, Jacques Chirac, who came also and said that actually France is nothing without Africa.
On dit seulement une chose, c'est qu'une grande partie de l'argent qui est dans notre porte-monnaie vient précisément de l'exploitation depuis des siècles de l'Afrique. Pas uniquement, mais beaucoup viennent de l'exploitation de l'Afrique. Alors, il faut avoir un petit peu de bon sens, je ne dis pas de générosité, de bon sens, de justice, pour rendre aux Africains, je dirais, ce qu'on leur a pris, d'autant que c'est nécessaire si l'on veut éviter les pires convulsions ou difficultés avec les conséquences politiques que ça comporte dans le...
This is France's former president Jacques Chirac. By the time he made this statement, he was still in power. He made it very clear. He said, France is nothing without Africa, because all the money we make in France come from Africa. So at the same time, they're giving African impression if like it is Africa who need France the most, because they're the one who comes with aids, they're the one who pretend to come and bring peace, they're the one who come to pretend to do a lot of things, but at the same time, they're the one who are benefiting. In other words, France would be nothing without Africa. If France, or you get to talk about France today, it's because African mineral, African tax money, everything that they are having comes from Africa. And this is how they've been playing their games all these years. This is how they get to manipulate the world with this strategy of saying that no, we are here to help Africa because Africa needs us, but that's not even the case. Guys, imagine that in our days, countries such as Senegal, Togo, Ivory Coast, Burkina Faso, Chad, and some few countries, all the business or big companies is being owned by France. They're the one who get to control almost everything over there. You can't even get a tender, you as a citizen of that country, because the tender have to be assigned by a specific or a certain categories of French companies. So in other words, they kind of like sitting somewhere in France, but at the same time they are controlling what is happening in France. They are the one who get to nominate minister there, starting even with the president. They get to choose a president. That is the reason why you guys, you'll notice that a lot of African countries were having this so-called problem each and every time when it comes to the elections, whether someone will come and say that they have won the election, but just because this person, they are not working with France, France will have to come and impose them a puppet president whom they will say that no, this is the one who won. They will even finance that person in order for them to make it look real. They can even talk to their media in order for media to campaign in your behalf, no matter how many people in your country hate this so-called candidate to the presidency, yet that the one will be announced as the winner. Because France, they need to put a puppet president, they need to put a certain person there whom will be able to facilitate them to achieve whatsoever they need in Africa. And these countries that I just mentioned, they've been slave up to now, because each and every decision that it has to be taken in their countries. It comes from somewhere. Imagine you are a citizen of that country, but yet you are not even able to get a tender from the government. And you be surprised to see that people are getting tender in that countries. There are companies that belongs to the French people. How did they even get it? They are not even respecting the procedures. You know why? Because France had managed to put a puppet president or a puppet minister in order for them to be able to have access to all this. What does all this mean, in other words? This simply means to say that these people, the open eye master, they have distanced themselves. They say that, okay, fine, we are leaving Africa, but we do not give you the freedom. So we're going to stay in our countries, but we'll be observing you. We will be controlling you from far. We'll decide for you who's going to be your president. We'll tell you who's a good person for your president, a person whom we believe that can work in our favor, who will be able to do what we have to ask them, and that is how we'll get along. And that's what they've been doing for so many times. That is how you find some of the countries, after they've chosen you a president, once things go sour between them with this president, that is when you see them changing the language. They will forget about this also good compliment that they used to give about this so-called president that they had chosen for you, and then they'll change the language by starting calling this president as a dictator, all because things have gone sour between them with this president. And proof to that is when the Ivory Coast, they have some problem among themselves as Africans. They had their own problems, and here comes France, who had the power to come and bombard another country because they are having their own conflict. Who does that? How can you go to another sovereign country and bombard because you feel like you have the power and you have the last word to say? Guys, have you even noticed on how some of the ambassadors, they get to speak to the head of the state around Africa? Whenever they talk, even if it is your government dealing with some issues, you see this so-called ambassador in that country, they'll speak without having respect because they believe that they are the United States, because they believe that they are the British or they are the France, and they can talk to African leaders as they wishes. And these African leaders, they don't say much. They prefer to keep quiet. Do you know why? It's because they have them here. They are controlling them. They know how they put them in power. And most of these African leaders, they're the one who have betrayed Africans. And that is the reason why you see each and every time, if we are talking about having our own currency or trying to unite Africa, you'll see these African leaders, they never do anything good because they know that there are people who have the last word to say about all this. They don't really care about you. They don't care about us or what we're saying. So with all this being said, that is what really motivates Julius Malema to go on the street with the EFF members to ask for France with other colonization countries to leave Africa with an immediate fact, because enough it is enough. It is about time to leave Africa alone. And the EFF did so by going to march to the France embassy, calling for the France to leave Africa immediately. Before even we get to develop more about what had happened on this day, when Julius Malema had to give his very harsh speech, there's something that really surprised me, and for me I feel it's very shameful. It is very embarrassing. Because guys, this march took place in South Africa. South Africans as Africans decided to defend African soil and chase the intruder out of Africa. This is something which is supposed to be embarrassed by every Africans and do the same everywhere. But surprisingly, in those countries where there's this so-called France or old colonialism who have been taking place over there, they did not want to do so. And whenever I try to do something like this, guess what will happen? They'll be chased by the police with a tear gas. They'll be beaten. They'll be thrown up in jail by their own fellow brothers who's supposed to be protecting them. But instead, they decided to go and protect this so-called embassy of France, UK government or US government, because they feel like they have something to report to these open eye masked countries. And yet they want to lash out on their people.
Hundreds of protesters defied a ban on large gatherings, taking to the streets of Burkina Faso's capital, Ouagadougou. They threw rocks and barricaded roads. Security forces responded with tear gas.
We are fed up with what's happening. We want the president and his regime to go. We are fed up. We're fed up seeing the suffering here in Burkina Faso.
By the way, that was different with the commander-in-chief Julius Malema in South Africa, because on that day, Julius Malema was not afraid of them. What happened is that they went to the France embassy in a peaceful march, asking for the France ambassador to come out and receive the memorandum. Instead of them coming to take this memorandum, they did try to sabotage the EFF member, and Julius Malema have to come and deal with them.
We're waiting for these people to come out, because we are not going to read this memorandum without this imperialist and murderers come outside. And if they don't come outside, we are not going to leave here until they come outside. So they must stop wasting our time. We are not here to play games here. If they think we are part of the nonsense they've been doing in West Africa, it stops here. We are not West Africa. And we're not going to allow that nonsense. We come here peacefully. And we want the France embassy to act peacefully and not provoke us. So they must come outside and receive the memorandum. Otherwise, we are not going to start. Otherwise, we are not going to live here. And by not living here, they will not live here. We are going to divide ourselves. Others will go and occupy the main road there. And others will occupy the gate of France embassy. So stop wasting time. The French white supremacists are not going to dictate to us on how we must protest here in South Africa. No one is going to fight you. No one is going to beat you. You have killed a lot of people in Africa. Why are you scared today to come out and face Africans?
So this is what again I do appreciate about the commander-in-chief of EFF, Julius Malema. Wow, what a courage, what a strong message he has to send to this open eye mast. Guys, as I just told you, what these people does in other countries, yes, I'm referring to those French countries. Whenever a group of young African try to stand on their way, you know what they do? They'll put pressure on that current president of that country, telling him that, or her, telling her that there's your people who want to attack our ambassador here. Therefore, we want you to deal with them. And since these puppet presidents, they like to obey and listen to them, they'll send the police, and this police will come with tear gas and try to destroy them, as you get to see it. So they do this, and whenever they do that, that's what keep on giving them power. Whenever Africans they want to stand up, they get to neutralize them with that. But this time they had to meet a very stubborn son of African soil who did not want to tolerate their nonsense by telling them that this is not the West Africa, this is South Africa, and it is either you come here or we have to deal with you in our own ways. You might even ask yourself, where was the ambassador when all this was happening? Look at the man standing on the roof looking at what was happening outside of the France ambassador. And that is a lack of respect for people who are marching in a very peaceful way and asking you to just come and welcome this memorandum. These ambassadors, they were doing all this because they knew very well that this is what we usually do in other countries and we always succeed. So they were taking their chances when it comes to South Africa. But after Julius Malema told them all this, they were obliged to come. And at first they told the police that we are scared. How can you be scared after killing so many of Africans? How can you be scared after taking so many of Africans into slavery? Now when you find yourself in front of a true Pan-African, you start becoming scared. Scared of what?
Cowards, come outside. Like no problem, we're not going anywhere. We're very patient, very. We'll sleep together here today.
Now let me tell you something. If this did happen in Cameroon or Togo, Ivory Coast or Chad, these people, including Julius Malema, they were supposed to be beaten by the police and chased with a tear gas, even the real bullet. That is the difference of where there is a true Africans who are determined to deal with this kind of people. And finally, the so-called ambassador decided to come and take this memorandum after Julius Malema had threatened him. That kind of courage, it is what each and every Africans need to have in order for us to make things right. So here comes the man. He took the memorandums, and then it was his time for him to pass his message.
Thank you very much, and good day to everyone. I want to say that we respect the EFF as a political movement. Also, I think you are very good organizers. You came to see us today, so it was normal to come out and to receive your memorandum. We cannot sign the memorandum because it's your memorandum, but we will convey the memorandum to Paris. And also, I want to say an important message, that we have our disagreement, okay? And today, France is a partner with Africa, and we are friends of the African nations. Thank you very much.
Now you see what I'm talking about? This is how you get respect. Because they try to use their strategy as they usually do to other African countries. It failed. They find someone who's very stubborn, such as Julius Malema, who told them straight away, like, don't mess up with me. We are here in peace. If you want peace, come outside here and take this memorandum. You have to acknowledge that there is a group of Africans who had marched in South Africa in order for them to ask France leave Africa. Did you listen the way it sound? It sounds very polite and very respectful, because he found some Africans who were so determined to make him understand that we are not like other African countries where you come and play with us. So guys, take this as a fine example that you like to apply whenever you want to deal with this kind of matters. So another reason that had motivated Julius Malema to even go and march with the EFF member to the France embassy is because of what had happened in Pan-African meetings. Pan-African meetings is where some African parliamentary around Africa continent who get to sit down and discuss about the future of Africa. As we get to have Africa Union, we also have Africa Parliament, etc. So African Union is being presented by the head of the state of Africa, and Pan-Africa Parliament, it is represented from different parliaments in Africa. So therefore, Julius Malema had noticed something, that since these organizations come to it in existence, there was no other English-speaking country that had took it. So they were kind of like rotating among French countries, and that was something that Julius Malema had to kill, because he realized that most of these French countries that were busy rotating on the seat of the president, they were all puppets of the this so-called France, who have to come, like every time they have to come and tell you what to do. In your schedule, you find out that France, they have also to be given a word to speak. So Julius Malema, the moment when he was sent there by the Parliament of South Africa to present South Africa over there, he felt like, no, things have to change around there. We can't live in a dictatorship whereby if we were addressing the matters and on the other side they have to tell us that no, there is a France representative here who have to come and address African parliamentaries. So he did not take that lightly, and he fought there.
Hello, let's do this. Hello.
Mr. President.
Look, you see.
Mr. President.
You see now. You see now.
Mr. President.
Mr. President. No, you can't do this. You can't do it. If you don't want sitting, I'm adjourning the house. I'm adjourning the house. Point of order. Point of order. I'll kill you. After this, I'll kill you. I'll kill you. Point of order. Hello, order. Order. I'm adjourning the house now.
Mr. President, you don't have to. You don't have to.
I'm adjourning the house.
You don't have to.
No, Honorable Abdulaziz.
Mr. President,
I'm not going to give floor to people who want to cause confusion.
No, point of order, Mr. President.
No, I'm not going to give you the floor.
There's nothing like that.
I'm not going to give you the floor, please.
Mr. President.
Kone. No, look at your people. Look at what they are doing. Order in the house. Order, please.
Point of information.
Order, please. Order. Hello, madam, let's have order since yesterday, madam.
After that incident, he then came and released a press conference where he spoke about the whole scenario and what he had asked every Pan-African to let go of France when he said this.
Since its formation, PAP has not had any president from the northern and southern region. The East, the West and Central region, dominated by Francophone countries, have historically used their numerical strength to block the practice of rotation. Despite the AU's advice that PAP must comply with the rotational principle, the dominant regions sought to ignore this and proceed with elections. Over the years, France has manipulated these numbers to impose a candidate of their choice. This explains why during last term elections, the France foreign minister addressed PAP without initially being scheduled in accordance with the program soon after a Francophone candidate was elected.
This press conference was not all. Now, the president of EFF, Julius Malema, decided to go to the France embassy, as we show you earlier on. He had a message in that referendum that we would like to discuss in details. Now it was about time he get to read this memorandum. What was this memorandum all about?
The British colonizers, the Portuguese colonizers, the Belgian colonizers, the Spanish colonizers, and all the French colonizers continue to brutally exploit, oppress, and micromanage all countries they colonized many decades ago. French colonialism in the African continent continues to be the most brutal, cruel, and devilish form of colonialism in the African continent. When countries that were under French colonial rule declared political independence, the government of France destroyed and damaged all the infrastructure and the systems that were developed through African resources and labor power because they wanted to retain total control of all the former colonies. The French colonial governments destroyed everything they were unable to loot back to their country after independence.
That is very true. I totally agree with Julius Malema on this one, because all we get to see nowadays with France, with these open eye masters, all they do is continue looting what they could not be able to loot in the time of colonialism. They continue to do so because they could not be able to carry everything. So it's just like, you know, when you have discovered a place where there is honey, and now you have tested the honey and you don't want to leave anymore. Now you are being forced to leave. You leave, you accept to leave, but your mind still remain there. So you'll do everything by all means to always be able to have this so-called sugar that we've been enjoying all these times. And that's what France is doing. They pretend to leave Africa, but yet they are the one who are controlling all the big business. They're the one who get to control all the money, even the mineral resource. They're the one who even get to control the currency, because they don't want to go. They know that they are nothing without Africa. That is the reason why they want each and every time to make their presence be known. So I totally agree with Julius Malema on this one.
The former colonies of the French regime, such as Gabon, Mali, Niger, Senegal, Benin, Togo, Burkina Faso, Congo Brazzaville, Ivory Coast, Chad, Central African Republic, Equatorial Guinea, Cameroon, and Guinea-Bissau continue to use the franc currency, and their monetary policy are dictated by the French Central Bank.
Wait a minute, my people. How possible is it that in 21st century we still have some countries in Africa who are having a currency. This currency is not African currency. It's not even a currency that belongs to other African country, but instead it is a currency of a money that belonged to the country which used to colonize them back in days. The country that used to use them as slaves back in days, yet they're still using their currency. And you know what hates me the most? For your own information, just in case if you did not know, the moment the currency that you are using, if it is not yours, which means this currency belongs to someone. And if it belongs to someone, which means it is this person who gets to produce this currency. So they will decide for you how much of money you need, what are you going to do with it. So they get to control everything because they are your reserve bank. That is how painful these things hate me personally. That is the reason why you get to see most of all these countries that Julius Malema just mentioned, that they want to always seek or asking for help from all these open IMAS countries. Sometimes even if they don't ask for it, them they will come and say that okay, the Europe Union, whatever they call it, and they'll be like, the EU have decided to give Gabon with so much money, or they had decided to give Cameroon this money. You know why? Because they know that we are the one who does this, and when we do this, this is what we're going to benefit. They get to control the whole things. So I think it's very important. It's about time Africans will start realizing that we need our own currency, because if you can have one currency, I'm telling you, all this world currency that you get to see that are trending, there will be nothing in front of Africa, because we are the one who have everything. They are the one who need us. So now they are taking advantage of us because they are taking our minerals and going to use it, and then the next thing we have to go and pay with what? With their own money that they are imposing on us. So this have to stop.
African countries that were under French colonial rule are forced to pay colonial taxes and currently paying more than 500 billion US dollars to the French treasury every year. And that is separate from the many natural resources French companies continue to loot from the African continent. The colonial pact that France forced all its former colonies to enter into include the following: paying for the infrastructure France built during colonization, keeping 50% of their foreign reserves in the French treasury. 14 African countries have been doing this for years. Interestingly, these countries can only access 15% of their reserves each year. If they need more, they have to borrow it from France.
Here again, you'll see that France did not only continue to loot our mineral resource. Instead, they're even looting the little cent that Africans we are making. They're the one who get to decide how much of money you need to pay as taxes. So taxes that you get to pay, they are being collected somewhere there in France. Whenever they print this money, they will tell you how much you need to pay them. As your government, you have also to go and pay, because, as I said, most of these African presidents, they are being puppets. So you have to obey and do what they will tell you to do. So they will tell you what to do because they feel like they have the last word to say. And as for you, you'll have just to agree and not to disagree or to approve. The last word comes from them. That is the reason why you see they will tell you how much you have to pay as a tax, and they continue to do so. Some of the old buildings which France had built during the time of colonizations, these buildings, imagine France, they are in France, but yet they are making the government of those countries to pay for those buildings. How crazy is that? Does that even make sense? Imagine you come at my place, you impose your leadership over there. Now that you leave, you want to start making me pay for the house that you had built in my yard. Does that really make sense? That is how these people think, how clever they are, but that is not how things supposed to be.
French companies have the first right to choose on all government procurement tenders. Senior military officers are trained in France. France has the right to deploy its military in the African countries. Countries have to make French the official language and the education language. using the French colonial currency. Former colonies have to send a reserve report to France. Ex-colonies cannot enter into military alliances with other countries without approval from France. Ex-colonies are required to join forces with France during war or global crisis. The French government and regime have played a direct role in the coup d'etat and illegal and unlawful overthrow of many governments in the African continents. France is also responsible for the assassination of many prominent leaders in the African continent. Additionally, France continues to support and anchor nonsensical governments that have no respect for African people. This includes the following: Burkina Faso, which led to the assassination of Thomas Sankara; Guinea, Central African Republic, Chad. Mali's instability has always been sponsored by France. Ivory Coast illegal arrest of leaders and instability sponsored by France. The continued rulership of Paul Biya in Cameroon is financed and maintained by France.
France military, they're all over Africa. What are they doing there? We don't know. They're supposedly to be there to fight some terrorists. You know, these things of terrorists, guys, you must watch us in our next videos. We have developed much about it. You'll be surprised. This is another way or another reason that these people try to keep themselves inside Africa, because they can't be in Africa without giving a fair reasons. And that is why they are coming with too much excuses, saying that no, there is terrorist attack, there is this, there is a conflict between this tribe and that tribe. We're here to bring peace. So they're pretending to be peacekeeper. No, they are trying to do so because they, at the same time, they have come with their guns which they had produced. So in order for them to sell it out there to other government, they need to come and apply it in Africa. They need to come and apply it on Africans. They need to come and make sure that these weapons, or whether it is a bomb, whether it is a rocket, whether it is a gun or a bullet, how does it function? Because they know that Africans, we are so many, and they want to eliminate Africans. That is the reason why they are coming and doing all these things. They create conflicts which they'll come and pretend to be as a peacekeepers. They pretend to be like people who are coming to give peace, but at the same time they're busy making money. And at the same time they are doing that. They want to be in Africa so that they'll be able to control whatsoever is happening in those countries. So these excuses of them saying that no, we are here to fight terrorism, we are here to help you to deal with this problem, we are here to bring peace. Most of Africans have started realizing that no, actually these people are not here to bring peace. These people are not here to fight terrorism. These people, they are here to win from Africans. And that is how things start going sour for them. When Mali, as the first, they stood and chased them out. They were like, okay guys, enough, it is enough, go back, we don't want you in our country.
The decision to suspend military operations came after Mali's second coup in less than a year. Strongman Assimi Goïta ousted the country's transitional president and prime minister, triggering diplomatic outrage. The US cut security aid, whilst the African Union suspended Mali's membership. This latest move will come as a relief to forces fighting against jihadists across the Sahel. France has just over 5,000 troops currently operating on the ground as part of its Barkhane mission, spanning 5 countries. Last month, President Macron vowed to draw down his country's military presence in the region and boost an international task force of special forces in Mali, known as Takuba. Officials have pledged to keep up pressure on Islamist militants operating under the banner of groups like Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State.
After Mali, it was Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso decided also to chase them out, saying that no, look, if it's about bringing peace, we're going to organize it among ourselves.
Burkina Faso's military government has ordered hundreds of French troops to leave the country within 1 month. The announcement made on state TV on Saturday night said the move was to end the presence of France's military on Burkinabe soil. The move comes 5 months after France completed its withdrawal from Mali after 9 years fighting Islamist rebels alongside regional troops. After the second coup there last year, anti-French protesters began urging the military leader to instead strengthen ties with Russia. But more than 60 years after Burkina Faso's independence, France has maintained strong economic and humanitarian aid ties with its former colony.
What about Chad? After the death of President Deby, what happened? Of course, Islam took over. And as usual, if you are not on their side, if they are not the one who decided for you to be in power, they'll try to collaborate with you for the first 3 months to see whether you're going to comply with them, whether you're going to be one of them, or whether you're going to resist and remain a true Pan-Africans. If you decide to remain a Pan-Africans and fight against them, that is when they will use someone else to come and fight you. And that's what they've been doing. They are doing all this because they don't want to leave Africa. They are doing this because they don't want to leave that piece of cake that they have tasted, which had that beautiful sweet. Now they don't want to let go of this sweet. So guys, this message of the EFF leader Julius Malema, it is something very important for each and every African out there. It is about time we get to see things in the different ways. It is about time Africans, we need to be addressed with all due respect, as much these people, they want to be respected by everyone around the world. That is how things are supposed to be, and that is how a mutual respect requires for each and every part to respect one another, not the other way around from the way they've been treating Africans. Guys, Julius Malema did finish his message with something very important when he said this.
Amanda! Amanda! Down with France, down! Down with imperialist France, down! Down with imperialist America, down! Down with imperialist Spain, down! Down with the imperialist Belgium, down! Down with the imperialist Italy, down! Amanda! Amanda! Down with the colonizer Britain, down! Down with the colonizer Britain, down! So fighters, when we say we don't want France in Africa, it doesn't mean we want Britain in Africa. It doesn't mean we want Spain in Africa. It doesn't mean we want Italy in Africa. They must all follow each other with their tail in between their legs, leaving our continent of Africa, because Africa belongs to Africans. So fighters, you must not be shaken. You saw today we just undermined a white supremacy. This is the ambassador who was refusing to get out and said the protocol of France doesn't allow him to get out. I had to leave the truck to go and fetch him. This is not France, come here. This is Africa. You will do what the Africans are doing.
Yes, the EFF with Julius Malema marched at France embassy, but it was not only France who did colonize the whole Africa continent. Instead, we have US, we have British, we have Spanish, we have Portugal. All of them, this message belongs to them. Yes, it's not because they had marched at France, and that means that no, it is only French countries who will have to get rid of France. It's not all about like Congo Brazzaville or Burkina Faso or Chad or Guinea-Bissau. They're the one who have to deal with these people. No, this message concerns each and every Africans, wherever you are, whether you are from Mozambique, whether you are from Zimbabwe, whether you are from wherever you are. You should just know that it is about time we take control of our beautiful continent. And we can do this by remaining united. We can do this by having the love of one another. We can do this by having one language. What about that, guys? Come to think of it. Because it is also very important. These things of having one language. We already have Swahili. Because I even heard Julius Malema was discussing about this thing. Whenever you talk about Africa having one language, apparently our African brothers from Nigeria, they were kind of like, no, we are so popular, we are big in numbers, we should speak maybe one of Nigerian language, maybe it is a Igbo language or Yoruba language. Then I still don't think it's a good idea, because
we must continue to fight for the unity of our continent. We must never be divided. We must never allow France to divide us. We must never allow Britain to divide us. We must be one thing against the colonizers and the imperialists. When you see an African, whether he's speaking French or speaking English, you must know that we borrowed colonial language so that we can hear each other, because they destroyed our own languages. We must build our own continental language so that when we speak to each other, we don't have to use their colonial language. Swahili is one such example that is spoken in many other countries. When we say, let's make Swahili one language, comrades in Nigeria say, no, our language is spoken by more people. Because we are men, we say, no, it's spoken by more people, but in one country. Swahili might be spoken by fewer than your people, but it's spoken in different countries. Therefore, it is the basis within which we can start to build a continental language. Once we have a continental language, we can communicate without imperialists hearing us. That is the beginning of the unity of Africa, which is a threat to France and Britain.
There might be so many in their number, but their language is only spoken inside Nigeria, not outside Nigeria. So when we're suggesting about us having Swahili as African one language, it's because it's already been spoken in different countries around Africa. In Kenya they speak Swahili, in Tanzania they speak Swahili, in Burundi they speak Swahili, in Rwanda, some of part of Rwanda they speak Swahili, in Uganda they speak Swahili, in DRC Congo they speak Swahili. Which other countries? We're having about 8 to 10 countries in Africa who does speak Swahili. So it's just a matter of time of them sitting inside that building of Africa Union and decide to make this Swahili become African language. Simple as that. So if we can have our own language, we have our own currency, we remain united as Africans, that is it. We're not going to talk about these former colonization countries, because by then we'll be on our own. If you want to come and get diamond from DRC, or gold from DRC, or coltans, or petrol from Nigeria or Angola, or you want to come and get coal from South Africa, or whatever you want to take in Africa, then you will have to come and negotiate with the entire Africa. If you are going to Chad for something else, Chad is not allowed to deal with you. Chad will have to communicate with all Africans, and we decide, and then they'll let you, if you are qualified, of course. You see why they don't want Africa to be united, because the day Africa will be united, these are the kind of things that will start happening. So guys, it was very important that we get to talk about this. It was very important that we get to dig through this speech, beautiful speech actually, that Julius Malema had given on this African Day, so that at least we can also contribute and play our part by sending this message out there to many of you in your numbers, to have listened at least to what Julius Malema had said, because Julius Malema is one of us. Julius Malema have African DNA in his vein. So therefore, we need to listen to him, and we need to protect him, and we need to discuss of what he say, of what has been saying in details, and see what we can pick that can benefit Africa, because all we want is for the good of Africa. Thank you so much for watching this video up to now. I really do appreciate it, but do me a favor before you leave, guys. It is very important for me, it's very important for this big audience. This kind of message, you're not gonna see it on the TV stream, you're not gonna see it in the media. So this kind of message, it is only in this kind of place. What we need to do, we want it to reach in the big numbers of many Africans out there around the world, whether they are in Africa continent or whether they are all over around the world. They have to hear what we're discussing on this video. Now it is your turn. Your turn is like this video, give us your thumbs up, share this video, contribute also with your comment, because it will help us to reach even a big audience out there. But if this is your first time to watch our videos, please make sure that you don't leave without subscribing to our channel. Follow us on our social media, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, of course also on TikTok. We are all over there because we want each and every African child to know what is happening in Africa and on how we can get to waken up this Africa so that we can do things in the right way. This is a new generation. This is our time. We need to do things in the better way. We need to correct where our forefathers, our grandfathers had failed to do yesterday. This is another new generation and we need to do things in a different way. Well, that will be all for today. Until I see you again, continue to be yourself, be good, be kind, have respect for everyone in order for you to be respected. May God bless you all. I'll see you again very soon in our next video. Ciao, ciao.